Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UAP, UFO news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I have the pleasure of having Samuel Chong on as a guest. When Samuel Chong read the iconic and controversial book, Thiaooba Prophecy by Michel Desmarquet, he became very inspired by the message contained in the book. He became so inspired that he decided to spread the message from the book, and he took on the very arduous task of translating the book into Mandarin and getting it published in a country known for its censorship. Soon afterward, it becomes a bestseller in both China and Taiwan. Samuel Chong's curiosity led him to seek out the very reclusive author, Michel Desmarquet, who he found in Vietnam, where he asked him about the very secretive information that was disallowed by the aliens and not included in the book. Samuel Chong is also the author of Spiritual Awakening with Spiritual Knowledge, Personal Experiences and Correspondences with Michel Desmarquet. Should be a great podcast. Samuel Chong has a fascinating story to tell. Hi, Sam. Thanks for being a guest on UFO Disclosure. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. Your story is so fascinating that I just had to have you on, and I want my listeners to listen to your story. Could you speak just a little bit about your background, what you do for a living, that sort of thing?
Yes, I was born in Beijing, China in 1978. I came to the US at the age of 15. I went to high school and college at UC Berkeley and London School of Economics, and also a university in Spain, and got my financial analysis master's degree. And right now I also have a JD degree. And I currently am a certified court interpreter in Los Angeles and a Chinese translator. So I did the translation of the book and helped it to be published in China and Taiwan.
So you're multilingual. Usted habla español.
Sí, hablo español, sí.
Wow, that's fascinating. That really opens up your mind. So you were very inspired by the Thiaooba Prophecy, so much so that you sought out Desmarquet, and I don't think that he wanted to be contacted. You found him in Vietnam, and you found him twice. You're a very determined young man. How did you find him if he didn't want to be found?
I mean, he didn't allow the people who knew where he was to disclose his exact location, but the people who visited him said that he was in an island in southern Vietnam, and I found out that to be the Phu Quoc Island. And I didn't know where exactly he was, so I grabbed a photo taken by the tourist of his bungalow, and then I printed out and took it with me. After I landed in the airport, I showed it to the taxi driver, and the taxi driver said he was going to give it a try, and then he took me there. On the second try, I found him.
Wow, that's incredible. That goes to show you that if you really want to find somebody and if luck is on your side, you can find them. And you went there twice. What did Michel Desmarquet tell you? Was he able to tell you anything that wasn't included in the book? Because I know that in your personal book, you say that thou allowed him to tell you some information that wasn't in the original book as a reward. Is there anything that you feel that you can divulge to my audience that wasn't included in the book?
Yes, what he told me was during the second trip that I visited him back in 2018, just 4 months before he passed away. And basically, he told me the information not to be disclosed to anyone else because Tao instructed him to tell me that. And I have to abide with his words and the instruction from Tao. But what they didn't tell or didn't restrict me is to write an article disclosing as many clues and facts and give as many hints as possible about the information that Michel Desmarquet wasn't allowed to write in the book. So I wrote an article. The title of the article refers to the second coming of Christ. So people will need to understand the basic information about the Bible, especially information about the some of the passages in the New Testaments, especially the four Gospels in the Bible, as well as the book of Enoch that wasn't canonized or wasn't included in the Bible in the very beginning.
Hmm.
And then people will need to understand that while the past is fixed, but the future is changeable depending on our actions. So this is why the Thiaoubans, the people from Thiaooba, the Golden Planet, uh, took so much pain to have Michel de Marquet to visit their planet in his physical body, giving him information as well as important messages and warnings to the people on Earth, hoping that we can follow their guidance and also kind of suggestions to change the way we live, to change our behaviors so that we can make the right choices in the future, so that the future can be changed for the better. Um, and people will also need to understand that the meaning of life is, as detailed in the book, is about the spiritual development. And I think if you read the article, you're going to see what I'm trying to hint is that if we don't change our ways of thinking or actions, then it's going to be a catastrophe in the future.
I know you're very motivated and that the book has a very spiritual message. You were so motivated that you visited Desmarquet twice. And the second time, I think you had to not tell your wife. So that takes a lot of motivation to try and get past your wife because there's always consequences. I know that from personal experience. But let's talk a little bit about how you got the book published because I'm sure everybody wondered how you were able to publish this book in China that is so known for its censorship. I mean, how were you as an individual able to get past the censorship to get this book with such a powerful, controversial message published in China?
To be brief in a few words as a science fiction, it took me a lot of work and efforts to do that because in the very beginning, I contacted so many publishers that publish similar books, including Conversations with God, including Ami, Child of Stars, and also including other books of a similar nature. But all the publishers refused to have this book, Thiaooba Prophecy, published because they consider that the environment, the censorship, had gotten more strict. So they were afraid of losing their jobs. And but I have a personal friend whose mother used to be the chief editor of a major publisher called the Writers Publishing Group in China. And I contacted my friend, and she kind of referred me to her mother, and her mother kind of asked the censorship bureau to see if this kind of book can be published. And then she got approval saying that if it's published as a science fiction, it should be okay. So she then suggested a book to that publishing house, the Writers Publishing Group, and then got it published as a science fiction. So we removed certain parts in the book that are considered to be sensitive to the Chinese audience or censorship, including the postscript, including parts that refer to the Chinese Communist Party and things like that. And it was quite well received in China, partially because of the social media. Internet celebrities or YouTubers began to talk about the book, and that got the sales going.
Okay, well, congratulations, because I know you had to go through, I think you mentioned 13 approval processes. It takes a lot of patience and determination. I'm glad you got the word out, and I'm glad that more people are finding out about this book because it's certainly a noteworthy book. So, as you mentioned before, Michel Desmarquet died just 4 months after you left Vietnam, on I think July the 9th, 2018, according to your book, Spiritual Awakening with Spiritual Knowledge. And as I read that in your book, I was wondering, did Michel Desmarquet give you any indication that he expected to be reincarnated back into Thiaooba?
He didn't give me any hints, but I would assume that he certainly wanted to, because the last time that I visited him, the second time, was that he was looking forward, very eagerly waiting to be taken away again by Tao and her people. He was looking forward to leaving this planet. He was tired of it and he was exhausted and very cynical about what was happening. And he really wanted to leave this world.
If I may, in reference to your China Sono Foundation and your scholarship program, I was curious as to how you can use technology to increase our spiritual development. And can you give me an example of that?
One example would be to use technology to be able to perceive and kind of sense the human energy fields, the auras. And that way we can determine or kind of see very obviously who is very honest and who is more sincere and who is kind of like insincere and lying to each other and to others. And also we can detect physical illness before the physical symptoms are manifest in the physical body because the energy field kind of affects the physical biological body of a human being. And this is one example. The other example is just to use technology to help people to kind of meditate and to know the meaning of life, which is kind of like what Christ taught in the past, to love one another and to really kind of know the meaning of life. And the other example is just to go back in time, and because the book gives a very interesting hint, kind of helping the U.S. scientists to develop a time machine. They're asking the scientists to focus more on the vibrations or the frequencies rather than the wavelengths. And if they match the vibrational frequency to the speed 7 times the speed of light, then they're able to access what they would call the psychosphere or the cocoon that kind of documents or kind of captures everything that happens on Earth.
That's fascinating. I'm glad you shared that with us. I'd like to switch gears now, if I may, Samuel. Let's talk about Michel Desmarquet's report in the Thiaooba Prophecy, because I know that you published it as a science fiction in China and Taiwan, but it's meant to be a true story. I've seen videos of Michel Desmarquet, and he's very emphatic about saying that this really happened to him. And not only did it happen to him, but he physically experienced this. He went to Thiaooba, it's a true story, and he wrote the story word for word the way that it happened, or the way that Thou dictated it to him. 9 days, and then he comes back, and he actually has physical proof because he has the bruise on his shoulder where Thou pinched him to remind him that it is a physical experience that he was having while he was there, and he came back with that bruise. So I'd like to go into the book because there's so much in the book that there's no way that we could possibly share everything in the book in one podcast. But I just want to give my readers a taste of the utopian world that Thiaooba happens to be, because Michel had to wear a mask because the luminosity was so great. Everything was so beautiful and luminous that he had to wear a mask to filter out 75% of the luminosity. Everyone was constantly happy and young in Thiaooba. He saw all sorts of animals, cows, giraffes, horses with women's heads. I mean, he goes into so much detail that I defy somebody to come up with a story like this from their imagination. It's just so much detail. It just speaks to the fact that it must have happened to him. He talks about the food, mana, the drink, hydromel. On page 24, Thou explains to Michel that they are all hermaphrodites, for example. That was a big surprise. Not everybody would come up with that if they were coming up with a fabrication. 10 foot tall, and they're always young and happy. I was thinking the whole time of angels. They're very angelic looking, very beautiful. And at certain points in the story, one of Thao's companions actually sprouts wings and doesn't need to use the Terra and the Litiolac, the handheld device that they use for flying. And I'm just throwing all these ideas out because there's so much detail that I just want to give my listeners an idea. And for example, people that read this book or are about to read this book or are listening to us now are wondering, okay, everyone on the planet is a hermaphrodite, right? How do they reproduce? How do they produce and control their population? Do you want to handle that one? Because it's a little complicated.
Yes, they can handle their reproduction at their will. So they can kind of use their will to have a baby born, and they can enjoy their sexual pleasures at will as well because they have both the male and female sexual organs. So they can control their population. So that's what happens there. And also, it goes into detail how the sexual behaviors on Earth can actually help to improve the physical wellness of both male and female. Because when people have intercourse, the chakras are actually exchanging energy with each other. So when the energy flows from the male to the female and vice versa, it actually helps to rejuvenate the physical health of both parties. So, but there's a one condition that the couple has to be in love with each other, and they have to like each other in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating the way that Michel Desmarquet, he actually philosophizes and he has to come to terms with the fact that they look like women, but they're not women, they're both sexes. And he realizes that most of us treat people the way we think they look and not the way that they really are, which I thought was a very deep and meaningful revelation that he came to. Well, there's a decree that an obligation that regardless of which planet you inhabit, you have to develop your spirituality. And this is a universal law that Thao teaches to Michelle. And I think that's an interesting message and one of the more important messages of the book. Most of us are preoccupied or distracted by material things, our jobs, the way that we look. And I'm sure that part of your message is because of that. We're here to develop spiritually, not so much our career or our bodies or our relationships, but spiritually. And does that mean evolving, reincarnating? And do we have to stay within the wheel of reincarnation? Can we go past certain levels? Do you have any comments as to that?
Well, it's a gradual process when one tries to develop the spirituality. And we certainly have to accumulate spiritual lessons in different lifetimes. So, in this lifetime on Earth, um, everyone has his or her own challenges and lessons to learn. For example, a beggar has spiritual lessons to learn as a beggar. The wealthiest person, like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, they have their lessons to learn, which is probably how to handle temptation, how to handle their wealth, things like that. So it really doesn't matter whether you're the privileged person or you're the underprivileged person. You would have to know that there are lessons for you to take and to experience and to learn. So I think it's a gradual process. A lot of people want to jump and to really go to the paradise immediately. That's going to happen eventually, but there has to be a step, a process that one has to go through. So this actually explains one of the frequently asked questions by some of the would-be Christians. They ask if Hitler were to believe in Christ and the Savior, will he go to heaven? No, he will not, because first, when he dies, he would have to go through a life review process just to experience everything that he did in his lifetime, feeling the people that he injured, how they felt, and then he would be really regretful, and then he would probably kind of have strong emotions to take to take punishments in his next reincarnation. So he wouldn't go to heaven or paradise, even if he believed that Christ was the savior. So I think this is a like misconceptions of evangelical Christians or fundamentalist Christians. And I think it has to be a gradual process. One cannot go to the paradise or heaven immediately. They have to be refined gradually and to be ready for that. And I think well, it's a process. I mean, life is a process of learning.
Yeah, I guess that answers my question when I asked you about Michel Desmarquet, whether he expected to reincarnate back to Thiaooba, because the book clearly assigns a certain category to each planet, and Thiaooba is the ninth category, and Earth is the first. There's a lot of serious aspects to the book, but for instance, Desmarquet was charged with writing a book the way that Enoch was in the Bible. But there's also a lot of fun parts of the book and exciting parts of the book that deliver this message, but in a very pleasant way and a very entertaining way. As I said before, I don't know whether you want to talk about a few of the items. I know that Michel Desmarquet, when he was lecturing, he would talk about the Ducos force field, sort of in a half egg shape that contained what was their living space. And that was very interesting. He goes into detail about maybe you want to talk about this, how you're able to go through the force field. And he actually goes into detail about how it felt to go through this force field. I don't think anybody making stuff up would go into that much detail.
Yes, and this book has very specific information, a lot of details. When Michel de Marquet was approaching the planet, he saw a golden mist surrounding the planet, and then a lot of kind of egg-shaped structures, like buildings. Some are kind of like eggs laying down, some of are upright eggs, half eggs, and then those are the dwellings of the inhabitants of Thiaooba. What happens is that when he sees the docos, what they call the docos, he saw like whitish color from the outside. But when he goes inside of the docos, he can see everything outside. So it's kind of like halfway glass. You can see outside from the inside, but not the other way around. And then they have a bed specifically having a vibrational kind of technology that when he lays down, he falls into sleep immediately, and it's very kind of relaxing for him to be in the bed. And they also have toilets, and which kind of a lot of people ask him, and they kind of dissolve and kind of dissolves everything. And also the food there is kind of like different colors of powders made of extracts of different materials like fish, meat, plants, and things like that. So very interesting and very different experience that he had on Thiaooba.
Yeah, and once you eat, you don't have to eat for a long time because the consistency of the nutrients are so rich. You spoke earlier about the auras and how he was given a robe that actually showed his aura and how important colors were in your surroundings or in your clothing for your health. And you were mentioning this before about technology to assist in your spirituality and in your health. I thought that was all very fascinating, and this research being done now, as you know and you pointed out. Michelle also understands all languages, and he has telepathy while he's there as well. I mean, it's something that I'm sure I, reading it, was very jealous. I wanted to be there, and I can see why he wanted to go back and he didn't want to leave in the first place. We spoke about the way that they fly. They have the flying platforms, and they also had a handheld way of flying. I mean, it all sounds like a lot of fun. And he said that the whole time that he was there, he felt so healthy, and the air was so clean, and the water so clear that he just was energized. Can we talk about the pyramids? Because I thought this was pertinent. There's a lot of talk now in research about what pyramids were being used for, and there was a lot revealed about pyramids. Do you want to go into that just briefly for my audience's sake?
Yes, according to Tao, the Theogons, the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built 17,000 years ago by a person from Atlantis named Thoth, using anti-gravitational technologies and supersonic vibratory systems to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner. Because Thoth was a very learned person and he had the knowledge, so he aligned the stones perfectly in a manner that the Great Pyramid of Egypt was able to become an energy center, kind of collecting terrestrial and cosmic energies, so that the users, such as the ancient pharaohs, could use it as a tool to communicate with people on different planets and in other worlds. They also use the pyramid to make rain using a metal alloy composed of copper and silver to project the energies into the sky so that the clouds would form and the rain would fall down. Very interestingly enough, University of Reading, they had an experiment projecting what they would call the orgone energy into the sky so that the atmosphere would be ionized and the rain would fall. So that the clouds would form and rain would fall. So this is actually proven scientifically, and there are also a lot of scientists nowadays believe that or engineers believe that the pyramid is energy center, like Christopher Dunn is one of them, and there are others too.
As well as a communication device, from what I understand, a communication center. And Thao explains that they use the pyramid to communicate with other alien races, from what I understand. It's
Yes, the users did, yes.
it's all very fascinating, and it's just stuff that we're starting to find out now that is most probably true. Michelle says that also that the Thiaoubans have lived or can live amongst us because they can change their size from 10 feet, and they could possibly be living amongst us now. And who knows, they might be at the Pentagon influencing our leaders. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yes. And I hope that they can kind of prevent what is projected because in the last few days, I got multiple confirmations from different sources that because what is going on in the world, they're ready. I mean, the military, I mean, the people, they're about to launch World War III, a nuclear war, or something like that. So I think it might be good for your audience to know that um, multiple sources from the US military and also arms dealers and also from people who have visions that were confirmed in the past to be accurate. They have visions now that, and also in the past that scenes or scenarios of aftermath of nuclear war kind of frequently appear in their visions. I hope that doesn't happen, but as I said, the past is fixed, but future is changeable depending on our actions. I hope that we can have a collective action to prevent it from happening.
Yes, that would certainly be a step backwards in our evolution. I know that Michelle is taken back in his former lives. They're able to bring him back, and he experiences a few of his former lives, which is a privilege. I'm sure a lot of us would like to find out what we've done and what we've learned in former lives to get us to where we are now. And the whole time, I was thinking the same thing. Are the Theobans, all supreme? And um, I know that Thou talks about them being misinterpreted as God in the Bible, and that Thou, I think, says that they were mistaken as God and that they actually helped the Hebrews and they were involved in Sodom and Gomorrah, but that humankind has never actually seen God or heard from him directly because we can only experience God astrally. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a distinction between God and Jehovah or Thiaooba. God is the creator of the universe, the great ether, or what we would call God. But Jehovah in the Bible are actually Theophans that helped the Hebrews to escape from the evil rules of the pharaohs. And that's Jehovah or Thiaooba. Actually, the pronunciations of the two are very similar. If you pronounce Thiaooba in French, it'll be Jehovah, very similar to Jehovah. And and so people kind of mix the two concepts together. God is a pure spirit, while Theobans, they're ET beings that live on the highest category of planets in the universe. They're like our mentors or professors, and guiding us and helping us to get on the right path. And but when we seek for help, we should look inside for answers because that way we can connect to the creator through our higher self. We have our lower self or higher self, and then so like this is why some people say that prayers are effective. This is the reason, because when you pray, when you cross your legs or when you hold your hands together like this or like this, you are forming like a closed circuit, like a closed loop of the electrons of your astral body. That way, it can communicate better with your higher self. When you project your wishes, your kind of imagination in your subconscious mind into your or to your higher self, um, is likely to be realized because if it is good for your spiritual development, your higher self is going to grant your wish. So this is why a lot of prayers are effective. If you know how to pray, go into a silent or quiet place, cross your legs and hold your hands together. Use your subconscious mind to project a scenario that you wish to happen. And then sooner or later it's going to happen if it's good for your spiritual development.
Well, thank you very much, Samuel. I'm sure my listeners appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate it. I'll try that as soon as we get off here. Um, the Theobans themselves are very godlike, so it's easy to make the mistake because they can see in the dark, revive the dead, everything that Jesus did in the Bible. They can change size and they can regenerate themselves by staying young. The only thing that they may have a little bit of trouble with is generating life spontaneously, which by that I mean cloning, and they can do that too. But Thou said that that's the most difficult of all that they can do. But I know that this is sounding like a very religious book, but Michel Desmarquet didn't mean it to be a religious book. It's a very fun book and it's action packed. It just happens to have this message. And I mean, we can talk about the vibrations and frequencies, but he goes into so much detail that it would take almost another book to explain the technology that's involved in the report. The fact that the same device that they use for flying, the Terra and the Tiolac, I believe that's probably the same device that was used to levitate the stones.
Yes, yes,
It's anti-gravity.
yes, exactly. They use the vibrational frequency to neutralize gravity.
I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, for my listeners, we're being modest, but there's so much in the book that Michel Desmarquet himself recommends that you read the book 3 times. I myself have read it twice and I'm in the process of reading it again. There's so much in it that you could easily miss a lot, and you certainly don't want to miss the core message. Can we talk a little bit about the golden doko, Samuel? Because I had to stop when I came across that, took a rest, and then read it and then reread it again because it's certainly significant and it shows a lot about a certain person's role in our planet. Can you describe what the golden doko was? Because Thao and his companions brought Michelle flying to this golden doko, and he was so dumbstruck that he actually dropped his handheld device and they had to hold him up. The golden doko, what is that, Samuel?
That's a doko that has 147 corpses preserved there, 147 different people or ETs on different planets. And Michel Desmarquet was looking at the different corpses. Some of them are lying down in the position of lying down. Some of them are in the lotus position, like the Buddha position. And then he saw the body of Jesus or Christ. And then he was almost kind of couldn't control himself. He was dumbstruck and actually saw the injuries of the Jesus or Christ on the body after being whipped, and also he saw the leftover scars or injuries on his wrist. So this is actually a very, very interesting detail. It's not the palm that they nailed Jesus or Christ onto the cross. It's actually the wrist here, because according to a lot of people or the human physiology, if they put the nails through the palm, then the body weight is so great that the palms wouldn't be able to support.
It would
Uh,
rip right through.
the-
Okay.
yeah, it would. Yeah, and then but if they put the nails on the wrist, then it would support the body weight of the person. So that's a very interesting detail because Michel Desmarquet saw the imprint or the injury on the wrist. So this is another proof that what Michelle experienced is true and authentic,
Hmm.
among other things.
Michelle asked Thou if they can see the future, and this is happening towards the end of the book, which I found a little bit confusing. What does Thou tell him? Do you remember?
Yes. Tao tells him that they can see the future only 100 years into the future or so, because they believe that the Hebrews or the Jewish people would intermarry with other races so that they don't have to take them back to their original planet, but they were mistaken. They couldn't see that the Hebrews um, kept their race pure, and this is one of the very puzzling points in the book. And but also it implies that the future is actually composed of many possibilities or probabilities. So this is why I emphasize that anyone trying to predict the future has to realize that while the past is fixed, the future is changeable depending on our actions. And this is why they're sending Michel Desmarquet to their planet or taking him to their planet, telling him, instructing him to write a book to serve as warnings to people on Earth, hoping that we can change our behaviors, our ways of living through the knowledge contained in the book. And this is the reason I've been so interested in putting in my entire efforts into promoting the messages in the book.
So Michel says most readers of his initial manuscript, this is before he actually got the book published, because I think he took him 3 years or so to publish the book. And he passed around the manuscript to his friends, as most of us do, to see their opinion. And he said that most of his friends that read the manuscript didn't actually believe that he physically went to Thiaooba, but still valued its message. I think that the message is probably more important than the story, even though, I mean, his trip is validated by a lot of what he says, provides a lot of proof. What's your opinion on that? A preference one way or the other? Because you can read the book and be fascinated by the report alone, the story, but you can't get away from the message. I mean, if you read the book and think about it, it leaves you with a lot of haunting ideas, which is the reason why I contacted you after a year, because I read this book a year ago and I started thinking about it again. And then I thought, wouldn't it be a perfect opportunity if Samuel agreed to talk to me on UFO disclosure? And you graciously did, so I appreciate it. And I was also hoping that you would shed some light for my readers on this very important book. It's sort of a wake-up call, isn't it, Sam?
It is. It's a wake-up call, and I hope everyone can wake up and see what is really going on in the world behind the scenes and who is really pulling the strings. People always think that it's the Republicans and Democrats fighting against each other, but what they don't realize is that there's a group of people pulling the strings of both parties. So no matter who wins, is actually the same result, except for people who are more independently minded. But those people are more likely to be kind of either they don't serve the second term or they get assassinated. Actually, the second trip that I visited Michel de Marquet, the author of the book, Thiaooba Prophecy, and when we were sitting down and watching TV, and he suddenly asked me, like, Samuel, what do you think about Donald Trump?
Ah,
This is a very controversial topic.
oh, of
I mean,
course.
I was afraid to offend him or something like that. So I gave a very neutral answer. I said, I think he's doing his best, but what do you think about him? And then Michel de Marquet just said, I think he's going to get assassinated. So this is his response to me. And
Wow.
I didn't ask him further what he meant by that. So this is I'll just leave room for imagination.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that it's just a very few select corrupt people trying to control everybody else. But I know that at the end, Michel Desmarquet was concerned. There were a few people, well, actually, quite a number of people that wanted to form a religion around his book and for him to be their guru. And he was very emphatic about not allowing letters being written to his publisher to that effect, which goes to show you he wasn't really trying to profit or boost his ego with his report. He was really concerned about the message more than anything else. I'd like to talk a little bit about your efforts in that vein, your China Sono Foundation and the scholarship that you created. It's very important that people hear about that. Would you speak a little bit about your foundation?
Yes, it's registered as a nonprofit organization in California, and I was hoping to encourage the students, and students meaning people who are in a learning process, including adults and people who are elderly, to apply for the scholarship and to read the book, because the book is so important, so enlightening, and that I think the grassroots movement will change the future for the better. So this is my whole idea of having this scholarship for the people to read the book and to improve their spirituality. It's a $1,000 scholarship. Anyone can apply, not just limited to the U.S. citizens, anyone in the world, any student. If you're learning, you're a student, so anyone can apply. And the deadline is each year on July the 19th. And so far, we have given the scholarship to people in the US, people in China, people in Taiwan. And I'm hoping that more people can apply and read the book.
That's definitely worthwhile. Where would they go to apply, Sam?
They can go to chinasona.org/scholarship.html to find more information. They can just read the book Thiaooba Prophecy and write what they think about the book, and then that will qualify them to be an applicant. A lot of people don't read the book and then apply. I can immediately tell who read the book and who didn't because this book is so unique. There's no way you can fake it.
That's true. Is that the way that they would contact you if people wanted to contact you, the Chinasona.org?
Yes, chinasona.org@gmail.com. That's the email.
Okay. And I also want to remind my listeners to pick up Spiritual Awakening with Spiritual Knowledge that was written directly by Sam. And it's all about his personal experiences and correspondences with the author of Thiaooba Prophecy, Michelle Desmarquet. It's been a fascinating talk, but I just wanted to give my audience a taste of the richness of this book and most importantly, the message that it conveys of spirituality and peace and kindness and generosity and humanity so that we can all evolve in a peaceful way. Thank you, Samuel, Chong. Thank you so much for joining me on UFO Disclosure.
Thank you.
For my listeners, please remember to share, like, and subscribe. And let's all manifest a positive shield of protection for all the children in war-torn countries like Gaza and the Ukraine. Thank you all. Thank you all for listening to my podcast.